Welcome back to the Profit Builder Unscripted. Today we're talking about what are a couple of things that you can do in your business that will help you have a greater control over the profitability of your business. Okay, let's jump in. Are you interested in increasing the profitability of your contracting business? If so, keep watching or keep listening, because I'm going to share two things that could be the difference that makes the difference and helps you not only increase your profitability, but maybe even exceed your goals. I just finished a meeting with my clients, Joe and Steve. And when I first started working with them a couple of years ago, they were struggling to make a profit. They were, they didn't really have super clear goals about their revenue, gross profit margin, net profit margin. And they really just were constantly sort of missing the mark. Even when they did have a revenue goal, they weren't meeting it consistently. And there's a couple of things that we did and that we've continued to do very consistently over these few years that I got to tell you is so fun just looking at their financial statements this week and seeing how they've not only met their goals, but they've exceeded their goals. And I started to think about, all right, what are the core things that I know that they've been doing that we implemented that is the difference that's made the difference for them. And I even confirmed this when we were meeting, and I just wanted to share it with you because I think that sometimes we just work super hard and we work at doing all the things that we think when we know that we should do. And we oftentimes think that if I just do more volume, I'll make more profit. But it's not the only part of the equation. And that was kind of their mentality, Joe and Steve, when I first started working with them. They thought, well, I just have to sell more. I have to sell more. And here's what we did. So the first thing that we did is we implemented them creating an operating budget. So their operating budget has four really important components to it. One is having a revenue goal, which almost everybody has a revenue goal in their business. And the second one was having a gross profit margin goal. So contractors live and die by gross profit margin, and gross profit margin is simply margin simply means a percentage, and it's just the rate of return. How much are you making on the work that you're doing? So it's revenue minus your cost of goods sold, the cost that it takes to produce that project. And then the difference between those two is your gross profit dollars, and the percentage is taking those dollars and dividing it by revenue. That's a critically important number that you want to make sure that you have a goal for, and B, that you bid to it, that you manage against it, that you pay attention to it. The fourth thing that we did is we set up a budget for what is it going to cost to run their business, their overhead budget, what's it going to cost in terms of salaries and rent and all that other stuff. And then the next thing that we set was our net profit goal and a net profit margin goal. Now, when it comes to revenue, it's going to be different for everybody, right? For them, it was some number that was higher than it had been the year before, but it was a realistic number. Their gross profit margin was specific to them and where they are in the industry. So depending on the size of your business, your gross profit margin could be different if you're a general or a sub, if you do commercial work, residential, and so on. And then net profit margin goal, we set at a 10 to 12% net profit margin goal. Now, the first year, it was we started out at 6%. And then the second year, it was 8%. And this year, it was 10%. Ideally, you want to have it be between 10 and 12% if you're in the residential construction space, either a general or a sub. So we set those goals and we had them do a budget. And then the second thing that we did was I implemented them doing a backlog report so that every month they were looking up and looking out and going, what do I have in signed work in contract that I have not billed for yet? So it let them see where they were headed and let them see and we compared that to the goal. So and I'm actually going to share down below a link to the spreadsheet that you can use in your business. But it was like I have them fill it out every month, and what they do is they fill in what's the future look like in terms of what do I have to bill against contract sign, and then let them see where is there a gap. And I got to tell you, this report, this backlog report and tracking it, it's super simple. Is one of the most powerful tools I've seen contractors use in terms of having greater confidence and clarity, first clarity and then confidence to take more powerful actions. That confidence in where am I in terms of do I have a shortfall? How much of a shortfall do I have to fill? This is huge because sometimes we think that we're working on like sort of the big goal, but what it does is it breaks it down into smaller chunk size goals, which is if you can know where you're headed and you know where the shortfalls are before they get here, you can do something about it. And then the third thing is every month they look at those two things. They look at their budget compared to their actual, and they look at where am I compared to where I wanted to be. And they look at that backlog report, and they're always in conversation. And they don't just look at that backlog once a month. Almost everybody I work with looks at it at least every other week. It's so powerful, like just those few things, like setting a budget, managing, tracking your backlog, and then looking at your results every month. It's not, and what's interesting is that this year they have been very consistent in meeting their numbers. Now, it's not to say that they had some windfall of projects come in. It's not to say that they had some, like it was some booming economy, right? A lot of people are struggling this year with getting enough volume in, and because things are kind of sluggish in the construction industry, well, in a lot of places. But what was interesting is them looking at that backlog report last year, let them see what it was looking like for this year. And they started doing things last year when they were super busy to make sure that they were filling their pipeline of backlog of work. So that they could start filling their backlog of work for this year. And it's like that whole thing of being able to see it before its history lets us have that clarity, to have more confidence, to take these powerful actions about how do I intervene in that future before its history. So I just wanted to share this with you because doing a budget and then checking your backlog and continually updating that, and then looking at your results, that process. And Steve and Joe actually shared this with me because I was chuckling. I was like, oh my gosh, like you completely beat your numbers this year. And it was the first time that they beat it. And they said these are the three things that were so helpful, because what it had them do is lifting up their head and looking every month at how am I doing compared to how I said I was doing? Where am I headed? How am I doing compared to how I said I was doing? Where am I headed? So that exercise of just doing those few things really helped them in such a powerful way. As they described it, like they were like every month we were just having more clarity, so that they gave us more confidence about what we needed to do to make a change. What did we need to do to fill the gap? What did we need to do in terms of doing more marketing or whatever? And so, as you think about your business, you've got a lot of moving pieces and parts, and it can feel daunting and overwhelming. And especially if you're only paying attention to the revenue number, when you start to pay attention to those four key numbers that I talked about in terms of revenue, gross profit margin, what's it going to cost you to run your business, and then net profit, set goals for those things, and then manage against it. And then manage against a backlog report that compares what do I have in future work compared to that budget that I set. And look at it regularly. Those two things really will give you so much more power to have more clarity and confidence to help you reach your goals. And it's not like there's any magic bullet to doing the work itself, but it's that whole thing of what gets managed, what gets measured can be managed. If you're not measuring it, then you're in kind of a churn. And I've seen this too, right? Like maybe you can relate to that. Like we get into this churn of just working really hard and um and hoping that it turns out. But the thing I found over and over and over again, and I know it's so true for me in my business and in my life, and I've seen this repeatedly with the clients that I've worked with over these many years, is the more clarity they have, the better the data, the better the feedback, the better decisions that you make. And then that clarity gives you confidence to make those decisions. All right, I hope this has been helpful to you. I'm dropping below a link to a free resource to do that. Start tracking your backlog. I hope it's helpful to you. Feel free to reach out to me if you have questions, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Profit Builder Unscripted.